So the Jewish people of Hungary were deported to Auschwitz in 1944. But for 4 years, the war had been going on. The destruction of the Jewish people had been going on. Did you know about that?
No, I was too young. Maybe the older people did, but they never talked about it. I never remember they saying anything about it. Only one thing. Nobody came telling us. We were a small town and between the hills, and nobody came there to tell us that something's going on. Maybe in the bigger cities they did know, but we never knew nothing about it till the Hungarians came in 1944, and they started beating. I remember I took my stepfather out, and for 2 days he never came home. And we were very Orthodox people. He had a beard, he had payas. And when he came home, he was all beaten up, and they shaved his beard off, and they took his payas off. We didn't even know who the man was when he walked in the house. No, his voice, we recognized by his voice. And they beat him for no reason.
And these were Hungarian police?
They were Hungarian police.
Collaborating with the Nazis.
And they said to, I remember my mother spoke very good Hungarian because of the First World War, and he did too, and they told them, don't think that's the same Hungarians or the Germans who was here the First World War.
It was a different breed.
It's a different breed, and we're different people. So don't welcome us. You Jews don't welcome us, because you'll be sorry you're welcoming us. I never told you that. We had a teacher, and he was a very nice teacher. And when they came in, the Hungarians came in, and they said he was a spy, and they shot him. And they let him in our river, and he was laying there for maybe 2-3 weeks in the river, and he was all blown up. And his parents came to pick him up, and they wouldn't let him. They didn't let the parents pick him up. They say, you see, this is what's going to happen to you if you have to help the Jewish people.
So they ruled by terror.
By terror. So they were terrified. They were really, wasn't so much our anti-Semitism. They were friends, but they were afraid that's going to happen to them or to their children.
And when the Germans arrive, it's Passover.
Yeah, it was our Passover holiday. And just as the last day from Passover, they came in one night, we was all sleeping. And they woke us up in the middle of the night, and they made us get up and just leave the house just like we were, in nightgowns, and they let us finally put a dress on and our shoes. And they took us to the ghettos. And we stayed there maybe a month.
In the ghetto?
In the ghetto, with no food, with no clothes, because they didn't let us take anything with us. And then one night they came in the ghettos, because they had surrounded a Jewish section, and they put them all in the same neighborhood. And so everybody opened the doors for the Jewish people, and whatever they had, they shared with us. And then they came one night, and they gathered everybody, and they put us on horse and buggies and took us to the trains. And on the trains, they must have put about 50 people on one train, one of those put the cows, the cattle cars, with no food, with no water, with little bitty windows just to look out. And the windows were with iron, so you couldn't even, if you wanted to push somebody out, you couldn't through the windows. And then we rode them about 3 days.
3 days?
3 days.
Over the mountains?
Over the mountains.
To Poland?
To Poland. And we could look out, that's all. But you couldn't sleep, you couldn't sit, you couldn't use a bathroom. It was indescribable. But we didn't know where we got in first, because they had a big sign that says, Arbeit macht das Leben süß, the work makes your life sweet. That's what it said in German. When we got up, they took us inside. And when we got into Auschwitz, and there was Gestapos with the guns, shepherds with dogs. And they started making a selection. The older people and the children, they put on one side, the other people, they put on another side. And I was only 12 years old, not quite 12 years old. And I was there with my aunt, my daddy's sister, and I wanted to go with them. And a German came over and yacked me. He says, "You have to go to work." And I said, "I don't want to go. I won't go with you." She says, "No, you go to work, and maybe you will help us, and to help your aunt and the children. You go to work." So I went on the other side. And I didn't know anything. They're going to be gassed or killed or anything. We didn't know nothing.
So the selection, those who were old and very young were sent directly to their death.
to the death camps.
And those who were young and who had the possibility of working,
they took over to the left. And then the other ones were on the right, the parents, the children, they took them to the right side.
So this was the last time you saw your aunt?
This was the last time I saw my family. And they started us taken on one side, they took them on the other side, and as we were walking down the streets to go into the camps, because it was outside when we came in, and those people had the white striped clothes, like, from the camps. They gave everybody those kind of clothes. Prisoners, and they started hollering for us to give them food, to throw everything we have to them, and we thought these people are crazy. They're taking us a crazy house. I mean, what's going on here? I mean, we didn't know ourselves where they'd taken us, where they'd taken our parents, the children. It was a horrible smell, like ashes, like tar. Even today, if I go someplace, I can smell tar. It makes me deadly sick. And they told us, "You see, right there is your parents now. They're burning them, killing them, gas them, and they all burned. They're burning them. There won't be nothing left of them." And we couldn't believe that.
You could see the chimney?
The chimney burned all that day, 24 hours a day. You could see the smoke and smell the smoke, always. And they told us that there's the chimneys where our parents had built, our sisters, our brothers, my whole family. And it was horrible. And then we couldn't do nothing because Auschwitz was wired, electric wiring. All around we had electric wiring. And a lot of people throw themselves on the wires. I saw 2 girls who throw themselves on the wires and got instantly burned. But they took them off and they were dead.
They committed suicide.
And it's very hard. It was a hard thing to see and to live through. But you were young, and you were with other young people. And then I met the girls. I met the other 6 girls, and we stayed together the whole time.
They were from your village?
They were from the village. Yeah, there's another thing. When we got into Auschwitz, when they took us to give us a bath, and they gave us the striped clothes, they shaved your head off, all your hair. And so when you came out, you didn't recognize each other. We were calling each other's names because, here I went in with long hair, young, and here I'm coming out with no hair on my head. So we finally found each other. So we wound up, there were 8 girls from the same village. And we stayed through the whole time. And Mangolo every morning.
Mangolo being the SS
doctor. Every morning and every night he came. And he was as close to me or to all of us like you are. And he had a little stick. And he went this way or this way. And he always counted.
What did he look like?
He was a short man, sort of chubby, round face, and always had that stick in his hand. Wherever he went with that. He never went without it. We were in Auschwitz. We could hear the Allies, the English coming to bomb. Every day they were bombing, dropping bombs. And every night we used to hold each other in the hand and we pray, "Please God, throw a bomb on us. Please let us not be softened no more. Just throw one bomb and we all be gone." But it never happened. And we could see the planes almost flying. And during the day when we were outside, they never dropped a bomb on us.
Dora, what was day-to-day existence like at Auschwitz?
They had us about 25 girls sleeping in one bed, one of those beds. And if one turned, we all had to turn. One couldn't turn without the other, because it was like herrings pressed together. In the morning we got up, they gave us a little bit of water to wash your face, no bed. And then we had to go outside in the appel,
the roll call.
The roll call. We had to go outside. And they kept us 2 3 hours out there. And it was cold, but we were all naked. Again, every time we had the roll call, we had to be no clothes. We had to leave the clothes inside. And then Mangala came again, and Mangala kept on looking at us, and always Mangala. And we stayed 2 3 hours. And if you didn't like the way you stand or whatever you did, it was start all over again, all over again. We went back in the barracks. We went to look for a little water. We went to look for the bathroom in that little hole. And by the time, then they gave you a little soup, water, really, not soup. There was water, and they gave you a little piece of bread, but this big, with soup. And that was our lunch. And then we again came out for roll calls. Then we had to stay in the lines till about 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. Mangala every morning. And
Mangala being the SS doctor.
The SS doctor. Every morning and every night he came. And he was as close to me or to all of us like you are. And he had a little stick. And he went this way or this way. And he always counted. So I must have been there about 3, 4 months in Auschwitz, in Birkenau, Auschwitz. He came, and we were all naked, and I had a rash. I don't know, from food or from not eating or God knows what. He took me out, and he sent me to the hospital. They had a hospital in that same place, but further down. So I got separated from the girls, and I really didn't know what to do. So I was there about maybe 2 days in the hospital, and the nurse came over to me because it looked like I was more better off than the rest of them. She says, here's the buckets, take these buckets and go and dump them out, because they couldn't go out, and bring the buckets back. I went outside, and I looked around. It was evening time, and I left the buckets right there. I didn't dump them. I didn't do anything. I just picked up and went to the barrack where my friends were, and I stayed with them. And this was after the appel already, so they didn't count the people no more. In the middle of the night, they came in, and they woke us up, and they told us they're evacuating us to another camp.
You told me that night when you left the hospital at Auschwitz and went back to the barracks and reunited with your girlfriends, you told me that it was not time for me to die.
It wasn't. That's true. Otherwise, I would have been in the hospital if it would have been that time. It's just something told me, go. And I just went. And that night, they took us to Stutthof. And we arrived at Stutthof, the same thing. SS, with the guns, with the dogs. Where are we going to go? We didn't even know where we were we going to run away, but they still brought the dogs. So they brought us in a camp, in a big, big building. And they left us there, with no food, with no water. We just had life to survive. I don't know how, but we did survive. And then one Sunday morning, we all got up. They had the camp fixed up beautifully, flowers, water. They gave us food. We didn't know what happened. We thought we got liberated. I mean, they told us to take a bath, and we went outside, and we couldn't believe all the water, it wasn't much food, but it was food. Before, we didn't see no food. They gave us to eat, and they gave us tables to sit down. And later in years, we figured it out that there must have been the Red Cross came. They must have told the Red Cross how beautiful they treat us. That the Red Cross came, and they must have fixed up the camp for them to show how nicely they treat us.
And then there was the time when...
The time it came, they were taking people to another camp. And We got there, and then there was a lot of farmers looking for workers. And they start counting people. They came by us and they count 5 and left 5, and we started screaming. That were 2 other girls who we didn't know even. They came and said, let's say we are 10 sisters, because we only the 2 sisters ourselves, and we had 3 sisters from our home and other 2 sisters.
So there were 10 girls, and you wanted to stay together.
And we wanted to stay together. So we started crying. Well, why? They told us they're not going to separate us. And why do they separate us now? We are 10 sisters. So this man walked over. He says, I'll take the 10 sisters.
A German farmer.
The German farmer. He says, they don't make any difference. I need 10 people. I'll take them. So he took us home. And he really was the nicest. He really brought our life back. We stayed there about 2-3 months. He fed us good. We slept in the barn. In the bottom was horses, and we slept on top. He had 2 big beds. We were 5 and 5 in each bed. And every night they locked us in. They were afraid we're going to run somehow, run away. And every morning they woke us up. We got dressed. We went down and had breakfast. Beautiful breakfast. He always fixed us nice food. He was the nicest person you ever wanted to be with.
In this time of cruelty, there were some good people.
He was very good to us. Thanks to him today, I think the ones who survived, we are today living because of that.
But the SS came back.
They came and told him that he has to bring us back, because you see, the winter started and the fields started getting frozen, and we couldn't work in the fields. And then the war started getting closer. The Russians were getting nearer, so they didn't want to leave us there. So he came upstairs, brought us bread. He brought each of us 3 big loaves of bread, and he said, I want you to take this with you all. I know you're going to be hungry, so you have something. And he gave us raw carrots. And he started crying. He says, I'm sorry. I tried everything in this world. I even told them I'd pay my money if they let you all stay. And they said, no, we cannot. They have to come back. And he told us, he says, he never told us to nobody, but his wife was Jewish.
And she had died before the war?
She died by birth. He had a 3-year-old boy. And the little boy, she died when she gave birth to the child. And he told us his wife was Jewish. And he cried. He said, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry I have to make you all go back. I know where you're all going back. So we got back to Stutthof. Oh, it was horrible. Hunger, lice, everything you wanted to imagine, they had there. And from there, they took us. The war was getting closer and closer. They kept on taking us from one camp further down, further in Poland, deeper to Poland.
And the Russians were getting closer?
And the Russians were getting closer. And then we got a town somewhere, I don't know where in Poland, because I didn't know anything about Poland. And we ran away from the group. And we knocked on some man's door and his wife, and they let us in. And we spoke very good Ukrainian. And we told him we from Ukrainian girls. We were in the concentration camps. Would he help us? The war is getting close. So he took us in, and he kept us. And he told us that, and we prayed. We knew how, the Christian prayers. We used to pray every Sunday. He didn't want us to go to church there. He didn't want the people in town know that he's hiding somebody. But they brought us food. We stayed upstairs. They gave us pots to use for oven, we had to do our business. And at night, one of us would go down too and dump them in the bathroom. But all day long, we stayed upstairs very quietly. And then we stayed there, and we could see the war. You hear the war. Was getting nearer and nearer. And then the Russians came in.
You tell me they weren't so pleasant either.
No, they wasn't pleasant. They were horrible. The men had, I don't know how a double wall where you hide people or hide food. That's where he hid us. But the Russians came in and was raping everybody. And they were the first line they came in. And they were horrible people. And then we were there, and then one man came in, a Russian came in, and he happened to speak Jewish. And he asked us, are we Jewish? We told him yes. And he says he would appreciate very much we don't stay there. Because if they don't know today, the Russians, tomorrow could be back the Germans. He says, I know what you all went through. He says, just leave this place. So we went down and we told the people that we all were Jewish. And we thanked them very much for being so nice to us and taking us in.
And the Polish farmer?
The Polish farmer. And
he knew?
He said to us he knew that we were Jewish. And I was going down to see where they live, in the middle of the street. I saw this man coming. That man was my brother, but I didn't recognize him. And he didn't recognize me either. He was going to their house, but he was going faster and I was going slow. And when I got in the house, there was my brother sitting. We both started crying that we passed each other on the street and we didn't even know who we were. This is what the Germans did to us. I had no hair. I must have weighed but maybe 50 pounds. And he was still so skinny too. So I stayed in Budapest with my stepsisters. I just stayed with them. And from there, one of the middle stepsister, she's in Israel. We went home. We decided to go back home. Maybe we'll find somebody living. You never knew.
To the village.
To the village where we lived. And we got home. Our house was completely destroyed. We had no windows, no doors. The people was very nice to us. They said they'll go fix the house. And they're going to do this to us and this, and they'll help us. But we didn't want to stay no more. We figured this is not a life. We had a life before, but this was not a life for us to stay. So we went to another little town. My mother had a sister living there, my aunt. And her 2 children came back, also from Auschwitz. And they got home, and the neighbor watched their house. There was nothing missing out of their house at all. And we got there, and we found each other. We slept that night with them. And the next day, we told them all goodbye.
And so you went to Italy?
We went, when we arrived in Italy, we stayed in the camp. But it was a
displaced
person camp. That's when I met my husband, and Isaac.
And you and Isaac were married
But 2 years later, we got married.
September the 3rd, 1948? And so you arrived in New Orleans?
She arrived in New Orleans in May 1950.
And for many years, the subject of the Holocaust was not discussed.
Not discussed. We couldn't discuss, none of us, because it was very hard, very painful. It's very, very painful for us to talk. Because you don't want to bring back all the old memories. Because when I cannot watch any movies from the Holocaust. I cannot watch at all. Because if I do, I wake up middle of the night screaming.
And many times, Dora, you and I have traveled throughout Louisiana
schools, yes.
Speaking to students.
I wanted them to learn not to be anti-Semitism, to realize every person is equal. And I want to tell them another thing, to remember they have parents. I was too young. I lost my parents, and I had to struggle on my own to live. When they go home at night, to tell their parents how much they love them, and to hug them and kiss them. And when they go to school or to work, to tell them the same thing again. We love you.